In the year 1993, Dr. Florence Weaver creates a video journal for one of her patients at a secluded research hospital. She explains that her research subject, Gabriel, has become too powerful and insane. Suddenly, she is interrupted by a security guard who informs her that Gabriel has escaped his cell again. Amidst the chaos, the power goes out in the hospital, and Dr. Weaver witnesses another doctor being thrown against the wall by Gabriel. The security guard tries to intervene, but Gabriel cripples him. Thankfully, Dr. Weaver knocks him unconscious before more damage can be done. When he regains consciousness, Gabriel is tied to a chair, yet he manages to broadcast his thoughts via radio, vowing to kill everyone. Dr. Weaver realizes there is no hope for Gabriel. Madison's life seems like a living nightmare as her husband puts her down and blames her for the repeated miscarriages. After an argument, Derek loses his temper and slams his pregnant wife's head against the wall, causing her to bleed. What an idiot. He is horrified by his actions and leaves the room to get water for her. Madison, on the other hand, is scared, so she locks herself in the bedroom for the whole day. Later that night, Derek is seen sleeping in the living room. Suddenly, he is startled awake by a sound coming from the kitchen. Looking for the source of the sound, he sees that the smoothie maker is on. He proceeds to turn it off and returns to the living room. She is stunned to find a shadow following her, and she wakes up, realizing that her nightmare was all too true. Desperately, she goes downstairs to look for Derek, but what she finds is worse than anything. Derek's lifeless body lies on the floor with his head bent at a strange angle. Her heart skips a beat when she sees the creature she dreamed about crouching next to him. Terrified, she runs for her life, with the creature following her. She manages to get back to her room and quickly locks the door. Unfortunately, the dangerous creature breaks through the door, knocking the poor girl unconscious. The next day, homicide detectives arrive to investigate the case. Although there are no signs of forced entry, they believe it to be a case of home invasion. Madison wakes up in the hospital with her sister Sydney. It is there that she receives the devastating news that she has miscarried again. Sydney does not know about the previous miscarriages because Derek did not allow the two sisters to stay in contact. The next day, Detective Shaw visits Madison. Although he tries to talk to her, the shock has prevented her from talking to anyone. Later, the detectives learn from Madison's neighbor that her husband has a history of being abusive. This information puts Madison in a vulnerable position as the detectives begin to suspect her of being the killer. 2 weeks later, Madison returns home after fully recovering. During her first night back home, something strange happens to Madison. As she looks out the window, she sees a street light across the street flicker before going out. At first she doesn't think much of it until she sees a figure standing in the darkness. Immediately, she rushes to close all the doors and windows in her home, hoping the strange creature will stay outside. Despite her efforts, Madison isn't fast enough as one of the doors doesn't close properly. Panicking, she runs to her bedroom and tries to calm herself down by repeating that nothing is amiss in her house. However, her fears continue. The next morning, Madison decides to take action to ensure her safety. She installs deadbolts on every single door in the house, causing Sydney, who has come to visit her, to question her unnatural behavior. The two sisters have a heartfelt conversation, during which she reveals that they are not biologically related. Madison was adopted at the age of 8 and does not remember anything before that. This has forced her to insist on having a child as she yearns for a blood relation. In a different part of town, Serena, a middle-aged woman who works as a tour guide, is wrapping up her work for the day. Just then, she hears some noises coming from a dark hallway nearby. Curious, she decides to investigate and turns to the dark side. This decision proves to be wrong when the dark entity ambushes her. She is now captured and held captive in his hideout. Now, once he has Serena under his control, he takes her phone and contacts his real target, Dr. Weaver. We now follow an older Dr. Weaver who receives a call from someone named Gabriel. This call prompts her to look through her files of old patients, which reminds her of something important. The scene quickly switches to Madison. She is at home doing laundry when the lights in the house start flickering. Suddenly, her head injury starts bleeding again. She becomes more disoriented. As she puts towels in the washing machine, she has a vision of Dr. Weaver next to her. Madison is thus witnessing the crime in real time, but is stunned by the sudden change in environment and the gruesome scene unfolding before her. What she sees next is truly horrifying, as a shadowy entity bludgeons Dr. Weaver to death with a trophy. Madison screams in fear and suddenly returns to reality. Her wounds begin to bleed again. A few hours later, the police arrive at Dr. Weaver's home. They discover that the rest of the weapon is missing, having actually been taken by the entity. Detective Shaw also finds the doctor's old patient files. He notices a photo of a young female patient. This arouses his curiosity, and he asks a colleague to age the photo by 30 years. Meanwhile, Madison is horrified when she discovers that her dreams are actually real. He thinks he may have some supernatural power to foresee the deaths of others. His sister tries to comfort him. However, the nightmare is not over yet. The dark force has its sights set on its next target, a middle-aged man who may have been an acquaintance of Dr. Weaver's. He notices that the windows in his room are open, so he goes to close them as it is raining hard outside. He sees water on the floor by his closet. Although he is scared, he goes to check it out. Finding nothing, he returns to the window when a dark figure appears behind it. Unfortunately, he doesn't know. When he finally falls asleep in his bed, he is met with horror. Meanwhile, Madison reaches the middle-aged man's room. She freezes in fear as the dark force climbs over her and repeatedly stabs the poor man with the remaining parts of the weapon. This time she is even able to see his face. She wakes up to a loud scream, which brings Sydney into her room. Madison tells Sydney everything, and together they decide to give the information to the detectives. At first, the detectives are a little hesitant to believe her, but after some convincing and reasoning from Sydney, they reluctantly decide to investigate a building called the Silver Cup, according to Madison. As expected, they do find a body. However, when they finally find a sketch of the killer, they find it absurd. Frustrated by this disbelief, Madison excuses herself to go to the bathroom. Just then, Gabriel calls her and menacingly reminds her that her real name is Emily and that they knew each other before she was adopted. The conversation reminds her slightly of Gabriel, and she begins calling him by his name. This revelation unsettles her, and she immediately leaves the police station. Soon after she leaves, Detective Shaw learns that Dr. Weaver's young patient is Madison and that her real name is Emily May. Meanwhile, the sisters visit their mother for answers. Hearing the name Gabriel, their mother pulls out some videos from Madison's childhood. An old video shows young Madison talking to an invisible force during her birthday party. The imaginary friend's name is Gabriel, who may have come to life years later in a horrifying way. In addition, Gabriel contacted young Madison via a toy phone and threatened to harm her mother's unborn baby, meaning the unborn Sydney. Meanwhile, Detective Shaw is closely examining Dr. Weaver's case file and looking for any clues that might help their investigation. She notices a shocking pattern. The suspect is targeting Dr. Weaver's old colleagues, one of whom, Dr. Gregory, is still alive and in danger. Shaw takes immediate action. In a rush, he rushes to Dr. Gregory's house, hoping to catch the victim before it's too late. But alas, he is literally too late, as Dr. Gregory's lifeless body lies in his bathtub. Of course, Madison knows about the murder. In her dreams, she stands in front of Detective Shaw, trying to alert him that Gabriel is still in the room, but he doesn't see her. Suddenly, Gabriel attacks her, and a fight ensues. He tries to shoot her, but misses. Gabriel escapes thanks to his extreme agility, which seems almost inhuman. But Detective Shaw is not one to give up and pursues him, risking his own life. Unfortunately, Gabriel manages to escape by jumping off the roof. This experience prompts Detective Shaw to meet with Madison and ask her to remember something from her childhood. When she is unable to do so, they consult a hypnotherapist to trigger her repressed memories. Under the influence of hypnosis, Madison remembers receiving calls from Gabriel's phone when she was young. During one such call, young Madison pulls out a knife and looks like she's about to eat a cake. Soon the scene shifts to her parents' room. Madison finds herself holding a knife to her adoptive mother's pregnant belly, revealing that Gabriel was hellbent on eliminating Sydney's threat. The memory terrifies Madison. The hypnotherapist wakes her up and calms her down. The mayhem is compounded when Serena, who has finally managed to free herself, falls down from Madison's roof, and reveals that Gabriel's haunting was Madison's attic all along. Obviously, Madison is arrested as a suspect, while Sydney pleads with Detective Shaw. In the interrogation room, Madison repeatedly tries to convince the detective that she is not the killer. Gabriel is trying to frame her. Frustrated by the lack of belief, Madison explodes in anger, causing the lights in the room to go out. At the same time, suddenly, Detective Shaw receives a call from Gabriel. In a shocking turn of events, Gabriel admits responsibility for the crime. Meanwhile, Sydney, determined to prove her sister innocent, investigates on her own. She visits the hospital where Madison was adopted. It is now deserted and located in a desolate place, yet Sydney bravely goes ahead. In the records room, she eventually finds Madison's files and an old tape. With her mother, they play the tape, which reveals that a young woman named Serena May gave birth to Madison at the young age of 15, when she was physically abused. Serena named her baby Emily, and gave her to the research hospital where Dr. Weaver experimented on her. This Serena, Madison's birth mother, is currently fighting for her life in the hospital. Also, Detective Shaw digs through Weaver's files to find the relationship between Madison and Serena. The tape reveals even more bizarre and terrifying information. Eventually it is revealed that Gabriel is not a voice inside Madison's head, but her parasitic twin in the back of her head. As the video progresses, we learn that because Gabriel and Madison share a single brain, he can force her to see and do whatever he wants. As is evident from the very first scene of the film, the doctors were unable to control the violent Gabriel and surgically removed part of him and sealed the rest inside Madison's brain. He was dormant until Derek slammed Madison's head against the wall, so the actual fault lies with her abusive husband. We now see Madison in a temporary detention room with other inmates, where they brutally threaten her. Suddenly, Gabriel takes over. Madison, who is now under Gabriel's control, willingly opens up the back of her head to reveal the evil twin. Now, he goes on a horrific killing spree, wiping out anyone who stands in his way. He shows no mercy to the detectives, and all but Detectives Shaw and Moss are killed. Detective Moss tells him to stop. The ruthless creature pounces to do his job. He arrives at the hospital after Sydney explains the parasitic twin theory. Meanwhile, Sydney also arrives at the hospital. Sydney is confronted alone by Gabriel, who throws a hospital bed at her. Detective Shaw is unable to stop his rampage, and is instantly injured while trying to confront him. Serena finally apologizes to Gabriel, begging him to forgive her because he shouldn't have left her and that she loves them no matter what, but Gabriel is unimpressed. Sydney makes one last attempt and talks to Madison, who is locked in a mental prison. She finally manages to talk to her, and reveals that Gabriel was using her embryos to feed himself. Unfortunately, it's too late. Gabriel shoots Sydney in the head, and Madison is forced to watch the person closest to her lose their life. But then there's another twist. Madison wakes up and takes control of her body, trying to trick Gabriel into showing her what she wants her to see. She pushes him further into the mental prison. He doesn't escape, and Madison finally learns to control her mind and use her powers for good. As it turns out, Sydney is not dead, but Gabriel was tricked into thinking he killed her. After Gabriel is defeated, Madison uses her insane strength to free her sister. The two sisters are reunited. Madison lovingly explains that although she longed for a blood relation, she was so blind that she did not realize he was right in front of her. Serena breathes a sigh of relief as the light of a lamp flickers in a corner,